minutes strong, I'm not going inside. 20 minutes later, you're right in the middle of the dance floor. And that's a problem. Because then you convince yourself, I tried and I couldn't do it. So that need to go to the club becomes even more stronger. If you did it right the first time, it wouldn't be a problem. So we're trying to develop this idea of, at the same time, rejecting this idea of instant pleasure that this society offers. At the same time, building enough willpower where you have a goal in mind, which is your akhirat, and making sure that no matter what happens, I'm going to take the necessary steps to work towards that goal. I talked yesterday about hurdles in life, if you guys recall. The example I gave you was of an Olympic hurdle race. And if you've seen this race before, you'll know that, like I said, the very first hurdle is the most difficult one. That if you can get over the first hurdle, the fourth or fifth hurdle becomes easier. The problem with shaitan, or not the problem with shaitan, but his strategy is what? That once you go over the first hurdle, the second, third, fourth, and fifth hurdle become higher and more difficult. And so our willpower becomes equally building as well. So two very main points about willpower that you have to understand. One is, please be realistic with yourself. Set small goals for yourself and be consistent about that. And not just about removing something that you're doing haram. At the same time, this is the month of ibadah. This is the month of worship. If you want to include a certain sunnat or a certain salat in your day-to-day activity, in your day-to-day schedule, this is the perfect month to do so. For example, Salatul Layl. Salatul Layl is one of the most important salats that we have in our ahkam, in our deen. And our ulama in Qawm have taught us that Ramadan is the perfect time to incorporate Salatul Layl in our program. How? On your calendar here, your namaz calendar, it says that the time of Fajr minus 5 minutes is when you should stop eating. Correct? And you should start praying Fajr 5 minutes after the said time. 5 minutes here, 5 minutes equals 10 minutes. 10 minutes is all you need for Salatul Layl. The moment you're done eating your sahri and suhoor, and you have 10 minutes to spare, instead of a quick 10-minute nap, which I would never suggest to anybody, by the way, because you'll never wake up again, is that you spend those 10 minutes in Salatul Layl. We have in our ilm akhlaq that if you do one habit for 40 days, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designates 2 angels that reminds you every time you forget this action. So if you're able to at least do it for the 30 days in Ramadan, after Eid it's 10 more days. After that, trust in Allah that He'll help you in making sure that every single morning you pray Salatul Layl. So I'm not only talking about willpower to fight shaitan, I'm also talking about willpower to tread the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In both avenues, in both ways, in one side you're lowering your sin, at the other side you're gaining your ibadat. And that's the ultimate Islamic life that I really want us to try to achieve in the 2 weeks that I'm here, inshallah, dimension by dimension, bit by bit. As a conclusion, as we wrap up, 5 minutes left, we want to make sure this point is concrete, and then we move on to a second or third dimension tomorrow, inshallah. Salawat bi Hijri Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Alaykum salam. Yesterday, I mentioned to all of you that one of the most fundamental and most important discussions we have to happen in this topic is the identification of your dushmans. Okay, I'm repeating myself for a reason. And we identified 3 main dushmans: shaitan, your nafs, and your mindset, your state of mind. This hopelessness that comes about. I talked about how shaitan operates. I talked about how the nafs operates. I talked today about how a little bit of shaitan scratch on us and we run to the corner and say, I can't do this anymore. Once we've identified these 3 main enemies, we now move towards this concept of building willpower and building self-discipline. If we don't have these 2 things, we become unrealistic in our fight against shaitan. And I mentioned that 2 main points about building willpower. One is being realistic, the example of music and smoking, etc. And second, I mentioned of setting small goals but consistent goals. And let's not forget, because I see some new faces here today, Yesterday I mentioned that ultimately one of the best tools that you have against shaitan is don't put yourself in a position where you have to fight shaitan, like I said. You go to the bar with your friends and you'll swear blind that I'll have orange juice only. That's one example I gave yesterday. You're putting yourself in an arena of shaitan and you're asking yourself, you by yourself, to fight shaitan's army. And we mentioned how strong shaitan is, and how powerful he is, and how he's been around since Nabi Adam's time, and all these different advantages he has over us, where instead of us trying to fight this powerful entity, we should avoid even entering his arenas. But of course, we live in a satanic society. We live in a society that promotes alcohol, that promotes everything Islam says is haram, so we have to be able to build willpower in our schools, in our businesses, and everywhere else that we go in society. And we gave ourselves the tools today to, inshallah, build this willpower and build this self-discipline, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, بِحَقِّ Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, Ya Allah, give us tawfiq to fight shaitan and his dushmans, inshallah. Ya Allah, we ask you, Allah, to forgive the sins of our marhumeen. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept our qaleel ibadat in this beautiful month of yours, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we see so much bloodshed and so much tyranny and injustice. The only solution that we see is the coming of your 12th Imam. Ya Allah, please hasten the reappearance of your 12th Imam. If we are doing anything to slow down that reappearance, give us tawfiq to not repeat those sins and ultimately forgive our sins. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.